The deafening silence of space was interrupted only by the soft hum of my ship's life support systems. The stars shone unmoved through the hatch, silent witnesses to the weight I carried with me. My name is Dr. Marcus Holloway, senior astrophysicist at NASA, and I'm about to reveal the best-kept secret in human history. It all began in 1969, during the iconic Apollo 11 mission. The world watched in amazement as Neil Armstrong took one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. What nobody knew was that that step would reveal something that would change our understanding of the universe forever. I was just a boy at the time, dreaming of one day exploring the cosmos. Little did I know that, decades later, I would be at the center of a conspiracy that would shake the foundations of everything we believed we knew about our place in the universe. The truth is that Armstrong and Aldrin were not alone on the lunar surface. Something was watching them from the shadows, something that challenged our understanding of reality. Official reports were altered, evidence suppressed, and a curtain of silence descended over the space agency. I spent years climbing the NASA hierarchy, always with the aim of discovering the truth. Each promotion brought me a little closer to the heart of the secret. Finally, after decades of dedication, I gained access to the classified files of the Apollo 11 mission. What I found chilled me to the bone. The unedited transcripts of communications between the crew and mission control revealed moments of sheer terror. Armstrong, his voice trembling, reported movements in the nearby craters. Aldrin, a man known for his unwavering composure, begged to return to the spacecraft. But the worst was in the images. High-resolution photographs, carefully archived and hidden from the public, showed impossible shapes moving in the lunar penumbra. Structures that defied the laws of physics protruded against the black horizon of space. I confronted my superiors with these discoveries, demanding explanations. The answer was an ultimatum: absolute silence or dire consequences. I then realized that I was involved in something much bigger and much more dangerous than I could ever have imagined. Over the next few weeks, I noticed that I was being followed. Dark cars parked in my street, mysterious phone calls in the middle of the night, encrypted emails appearing in my inbox. Paranoia began to consume my life. That's when I decided that the truth had to come out, no matter what the cost. Using my contacts and knowledge of NASA's systems, I meticulously planned my escape. I obtained an experimental spacecraft, supposedly intended for orbital testing, and secretly modified it for a longer journey. Now, here I am, alone in the void of space, with a set course for the moon. I carry with me all the evidence I've managed to gather, determined to expose the truth to the world. I know I'm being pursued. Radars show an unidentified spacecraft on my tail, gaining ground by the hour. As I approach our natural satellite, I can't help the fear that consumes me. What really happened on that historic mission? What did Armstrong and Aldrin see that made them so terrified? And most importantly, what awaits me on the lunar surface? The craters are now visible, each one a possible hiding place for unimaginable secrets. My instruments begin to pick up anomalies, readings that defy any known scientific explanation. Fear and anticipation fight inside me as I begin the landing procedures. I'm about to set foot on the same soil that Armstrong did more than half a century ago. But unlike him, I have come prepared to face whatever is hidden here. The truth, no matter how terrible, must be revealed. As the lunar surface approaches, an impossible shadow looms over my ship. Something is moving out there, something big. My heart races. But there's no turning back now. The world needs to know we're not alone. And NASA has known this since the first step on the moon. The impact of the forced landing reverberated throughout the spacecraft, shaking me violently against the seatbelts. My fingers gripped the controls hard enough to whiten my knuckles as I struggled to stay conscious. The silence that followed was even more terrifying than the crash. With trembling hands, I checked the ship's systems. Miraculously, the life support still worked, but the main engine was severely damaged. I looked through the cracked hatch. The gray, desolate expanse of the lunar surface stretched out in all directions. The Earth, a distant blue orb, loomed on the black horizon. painfully reminding me of how alone I was. Or maybe I wasn't. The shadow I saw during the descent wasn't a hallucination caused by stress. Something had interfered with my landing. Something that defied the laws of physics that I had spent my life studying. And now, that same presence seemed to envelop my damaged ship. A dense, palpable darkness that moved unnaturally. I swallowed, trying to calm my nerves. I had come here for answers, and I couldn't afford to panic now. With deliberate movements, I put on my spacesuit, meticulously checking every seal and connection. The sound of my own breathing inside the helmet was both comforting and claustrophobic. Before opening the hatch, I activated the recorder in my suit. This is Dr. Marcus Holloway. The date is, well, it doesn't matter now. I'm about to leave my ship on the lunar surface. If anyone finds this recording, please bring it to public attention. The world needs to know the truth. With a hiss of depressurization, the hatch opened. The vacuum of space welcomed me, an oppressive silence that seemed to swallow up even the sound of my thoughts. I took my first hesitant step onto the lunar surface, the gray dust rising in slow motion around my boots. It was then that I saw the marks. Not far from my ship there were footprints, not the iconic footprints left by Armstrong and his colleagues, preserved for decades in the absence of atmosphere. These were different, deeper, with a strange configuration that didn't resemble anything I'd ever seen, and they looked fresh. My heart raced as I cautiously followed the footprints. They led to a large crater not far away. As I got closer to the edge, I noticed something strange on the crater wall. It wasn't moonrock, but something smooth and artificial. With trembling fingers, I wiped the dust from the surface. A symbol appeared, a complex glyph that seemed to change shape as I looked at it. Below it, to my shock, were words in English: Lunar Guardian Project, Restricted Access. My mind was spinning. NASA didn't just know about the alien presence. Had they collaborated with it, built secret facilities on the moon? The implications were dizzying. As I contemplated this shocking revelation, a movement in the corner of my eye made me turn sharply. On the lunar horizon, a figure was moving. Humanoid, but wrong. Its movements were too fluid for the low-gravity environment, its shape changing subtly as it approached. I froze, torn between terror and an overwhelming scientific curiosity. The figure stopped about 50 meters away, its face, and if you could call it that, turned towards me. There were no eyes visible, but I could feel its gaze piercing me, probing not only my body but my very mind. A voice rang in my head, completely bypassing my ears. "You shouldn't be here, Dr. Holloway." I staggered backwards, almost losing my balance in the low gravity. How did this thing know my name? "We've been watching, waited. Your species isn't ready yet." Images began to flood my mind. I saw Earth's history unfolding in seconds, ancient civilizations receiving visitors, technologies beyond our comprehension being subtly introduced over the millennia. I saw Armstrong and Aldrin, their faces contorted with terror as they witnessed something beyond their comprehension. And then I saw the future, a future where humanity was faced with truths it wasn't prepared for. Chaos, destruction, extinction. "You have a choice, Dr. Holloway," the voice continued, each word reverberating through my being. "Join us in protecting your species, or force a premature revelation that will lead to your ruin." As I struggled to process all this, a bright light illuminated the crater. I looked up and saw a ship rapidly approaching. By design, I recognized it as belonging to NASA. They had found me. The alien figure began to move away, disappearing into the shadows of the crater. "Choose wisely, Dr. Holloway. The fate of your species is in your hands." As the NASA spacecraft landed next to mine, I was faced with the most important decision of my life: reveal the truth to the world and potentially doom humanity, or join a cosmic conspiracy to protect our species from truths that could destroy us. The weight of the universe seemed to rest on my shoulders as the ship's hatch opened, revealing figures in spacesuits advancing towards me. Time was running out. I needed to decide. Time seemed to drag on as the figures in NASA spacesuits approached. My mind raced, analyzing every possible consequence of my actions. The alien voice still echoed in my head, its words laden with a cosmic weight that threatened to crush me. With a quick movement, I activated the emergency transmission on my suit. If I was silenced, at least part of the truth would escape. This is Dr. Marcus Holloway. NASA has hidden the existence of extraterrestrial life since the Apollo 11 mission. There's a secret facility on the moon. They're here, watching us, manipulating our... A wave of invisible energy hit me, cutting off my transmission and knocking me to the ground. Gasping, I looked up and saw one of the NASA figures pointing a device at me. It was no ordinary weapon, but something far beyond the technology I knew. Dr. Holloway, a familiar voice sounded through the communicator. You have no idea what you've just done. I recognized it immediately. It was the voice of Dr. Evelyn Carter, my mentor and NASA's Director of Lunar Operations. The figure speaking removed her helmet, revealing Evelyn's aged but determined face. Evelyn, I gasped, struggling to stand up in the low gravity. Did you know? All this time? Her gaze was a mixture of disappointment and resignation. Marcus, there are things at stake here that go far beyond your comprehension, or mine, to be honest. As she spoke, I noticed movements in the shadows around us. Fluid, almost translucent shapes moved in the periphery of my vision. The aliens were watching us, waiting. Evelyn continued, her voice laden with a deep sadness. Since first contact in 1969, we have been working to prepare humanity. But the process is slow, delicate. Your transmission may have just doomed our species. The horror of what I had done began to consume me. In my search for the truth, could I have sealed the fate of the Earth? A sudden tremor shook the lunar soil. On the horizon, a bright light began to form, rapidly growing in intensity. It's too late, Evelyn muttered, her face pale with fear. They're coming. The dark sky above us tore apart, revealing a dimensional rift of impossible proportions. Through it, I glimpsed shapes and colors that defied human comprehension. My mind struggled to process what my eyes were witnessing. Ships of alien design began to emerge from the rift, each one larger and more impressive than the last. There were not dozens or hundreds, but thousands. An interstellar army descending on the moon. What have we done? I whispered, the weight of my guilt threatening to crush me. Evelyn put a hand on my shoulder. There's no turning back, Marcus. Now we have to face the consequences. The alien ships began to position themselves not only around the moon, but also towards Earth. Pulsating lights emanated from them, sweeping across the lunar surface and the distant blue planet. It was then that a voice, not just in my head, but apparently reverberating through the very vacuum of space, made itself heard. Humanity, you have been judged and deemed premature. The experiment must be restarted. Horror and understanding flooded over me. It wasn't just about contact or revelation, it was about judgment. Humanity was being evaluated, and I, in my arrogance, had forced a premature decision. The ships began to emit beams of energy, hitting specific points on the Earth's surface. From our position on the moon, we could see flashes of light spreading across the globe. "What's happening?" I shouted, desperate for answers. Evelyn, with tears in her eyes, replied, "They're rebooting, erasing, giving humanity another chance to evolve, without the corruptions and flaws we've developed." We watched helplessly as human civilization was systematically dismantled before our eyes. Entire cities disappeared in flashes of light. Oceans moved in impossible ways. The very geography of the Earth seemed to be being rewritten. In a matter of hours, the planet we knew was unrecognizable. Billions of lives, histories, cultures, all erased in a cosmic instant. The alien ships began to withdraw, disappearing back through the dimensional rift. In their place, they left a transformed, primitive Earth, ready for a new beginning. Evelyn turned to me, her eyes reflecting the weight of billions of lives lost. "What now, Dr. Holloway? What do we do with the knowledge we carry?" I looked at the reborn Earth, my mind struggling to process the magnitude of what we had witnessed. The truth I had sought so much now weighed on me like a curse. "We rebuild," I finally said, my voice shaky but determined. "And this time, we'll do it right." As the rising sun illuminated the contours of a world reborn, I realized that our journey had only just begun. Humanity had a second chance, and it was up to us, the only survivors with knowledge of the past, to guide it to a better future. The price of truth had been incomprehensible. Now it was our responsibility to ensure that the sacrifice was not in vain. The silence that followed the Earth's transformation was deafening. Evelyn and I remained motionless, our gazes fixed on the blue and green orb we had once called home. The lunar base, once a well-kept secret, had now become our refuge and prison. Days passed as we struggled to process the magnitude of what had happened. Guilt consumed me, every beat of my heart a painful reminder of the lives I had inadvertently helped to erase. Evelyn, on the other hand, was channeling her grief into action. "Marcus," she called out to me, her voice echoing through the main chamber of the base. "We need to make a complete inventory of our resources. If we're going to lead humanity again, we need to survive first." I nodded mechanically, grateful for the distraction. As we rummaged through the base's compartments, a grim reality began to form. We had supplies for a few months, a year at most if we were extremely careful. After that, "Is there anything else we're not seeing, Evelyn?" I asked, frustration evident in my voice. I don't know, secret alien portal to Earth." "Anything?" She hesitated, her gaze darting to a sealed-off section of the base that we hadn't yet explored. "There is something, but I'm not sure we're ready for it." Before I could press for more information, a shrill alarm cut through the air. Red lights flashed, bathing the base in an eerie glow. "What's that?" I shouted above the noise. Evelyn ran to the main console, her fingers flying over the controls. "Impossible," she muttered. "We're detecting signs of life on the Earth's surface, and it's not just plants or animals, they're human." My heart leapt. "Survivors? But how?" "No," Evelyn replied, her face pale in the light of the screens. "They're not survivors. They're new, as if they'd come out of nowhere. They evolved in days what should have taken millions of years." The implication of what she was saying hit me like a punch. The aliens hadn't just rebooted the Earth, they had accelerated its evolution. A new humanity was emerging, free from the stains and corruptions of our history. "What do we do now?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Evelyn turned to me, her eyes carrying the weight of our new responsibility. "We watch, we learn, and when the time comes, we guide. But this time, we'll do it right." Over the next few days, we spent hours looking at the screens, witnessing the birth of a new civilization. It was fascinating and terrifying at the same time. We saw the first hesitant steps, the first words, the formation of communities. Everything was happening at breakneck speed. But with the fascination came horror. We saw the first conflicts arise, the first divisions. Human nature, even in this accelerated and pure version, still bore the seeds of the chaos we had hoped to leave behind. "It's happening again," I muttered, watching a territorial dispute turn into violence. All the suffering, all the loss. For what? Evelyn put a hand on my shoulder. "For a chance, Marcus, a chance to do better." It was then that I noticed something strange in the readings. Energy patterns that didn't make sense, fluctuations that defied the laws of physics that I knew. "Evelyn," I called out, pointing at the anomalies. "What's that?" She examined the data, her face a mask of concentration. Then, to my surprise, she smiled. "It's time, Marcus. Time to show you the true purpose of this base." Evelyn guided me to the sealed section I had noticed earlier. With a series of complex commands, the door opened, revealing a chamber that looked like something out of a science fiction movie. In the center of the room, hovering above a pedestal, was a device that pulsed with ethereal blue energy. Its shape was impossible to describe, shifting and writhing before my eyes. "What is that?" I asked, amazed and terrified at the same time. "Our legacy," Evelyn replied, "and our responsibility. With it, we can subtly influence the course of the new humanity, guide them away from the mistakes of the past. But every intervention has a cost. Every change we make brings us closer to becoming what we fear. I looked at the device, then back at the screens showing the development of the new Earth. The power to shape the destiny of an entire species was literally at our fingertips. What if we make mistakes? I asked, the enormity of the task overwhelming me. Evelyn smiled sadly. Then we'll learn from them, and we'll try again. That's all we can do. As we contemplated our new reality as reluctant guardians of a reborn humanity, I couldn't help but wonder, were we up to the task? Or were we destined to repeat the same mistakes, trapped in a cosmic cycle of trial and error? The alien device pulsed, as if answering my unspoken doubts. Our journey was just beginning, and the future of humanity rested in our trembling hands. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Evelyn and I took turns in endless shifts, observing the rapid development of the new humanity through the moon base's monitoring screens. The alien device, which we came to call the Beacon, pulsed constantly, a silent reminder of the power and responsibility we now carried. Our first intervention came when we observed a tribe on the brink of a deadly conflict with their neighbors over scarce resources. With a hesitant touch on the lighthouse, we sent out a subtle impulse. Hours later, we watched in amazement as, instead of war, the tribes established a system of trade. "It worked," I whispered, hardly believing my eyes. Evelyn nodded, but her expression was somber. "Yes, but look at the lighthouse." The device, once a brilliant blue, now had a dark stain on its surface, like an expanding stain. "Every intervention has a cost," Evelyn explained. "Not just for us, but for the very fabric of reality." In the months that followed, we used the lighthouse with increasing caution. We guided humanity away from devastating conflicts, inspired technological advances, and promoted global cooperation. But each intervention left its mark, both on the lighthouse and on us. I began to have vivid nightmares, visions of alternative realities, worlds where our interventions led to catastrophic consequences. Evelyn, for her part, became more reserved, spending hours studying ancient alien texts that we discovered in the base's archives. It was during one of our rare breaks that Evelyn finally shared her concerns. "Marcus," she began, her voice tired, "I think I understand the true purpose of the lighthouse. It's not just a tool to guide humanity, it's a test." Frowning, I asked, "A test? For whom?" "For us," she replied. "The aliens aren't just observing the development of the new humanity, they're watching us, seeing how we use the power we've been given." The realization hit me like a bolt of lightning. "So every choice we make is being judged," Evelyn added, "and I'm afraid we're failing." Before I could fully process the implications of her words, a shrill alarm cut through the air. We rushed into the control room, only to be greeted by a sight that chilled my blood. On the main screen, we saw a city in flames. Not a primitive city of wood and stone, but a futuristic metropolis, with skyscrapers that touched the clouds and vehicles that flew between them. "Impossible," I muttered. "They shouldn't have reached this level of technology for centuries." Evelyn typed furiously at the controls, pulling up more data. "It's not just one city," she said, her voice shaking. "It's global. Somehow, our interventions have accelerated its technological development to an impossible pace. And now they're destroying themselves," I concluded, watching in horror as nuclear explosions began to bloom around the globe. Desperate, we turned to the lighthouse. But the device, once bright and full of life, was now almost completely black, emitting only a faint pulse of light. "No," Evelyn whispered, tears streaming down her face. We don't have enough energy for another large-scale intervention." As we watched helplessly, the civilization we had nurtured and guided fall apart, a terrible realization hit me. "We did it," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "In our arrogance, we thought we could shape the destiny of humanity, but we only repeated the same mistakes, on an even grander scale. The floor of the lunar base began to shake. Alarms sounded everywhere, and lights flashed ominously. "What's happening?" I shouted above the chaos. Evelyn, her face pale with terror, pointed to one of the side screens. On it, we saw a massive fleet of alien ships emerging from a dimensional rift near the moon. "They're back," Evelyn said, her voice laden with defeat. "And this time, I don't think it's for a simple restart." As the ships approached, the lighthouse began to pulsate with an intensity we had never seen before. Alien symbols danced across its surface, forming complex and mesmerizing patterns. "Marcus," Evelyn called out, her eyes fixed on the device. "I think we have one last chance, one final choice." I looked at her, then back at the lighthouse. I understood instantly. We could use the device's remaining energy to try to save the Earth one more time, or we could use it to communicate directly with the aliens, I concluded her thought. Evelyn nodded gravely. "Maybe, if we can explain, beg for mercy." Time was running out, the alien ships were almost upon us, and the Earth continued to consume itself in flames below. The choice weighed on us like the universe itself: save a humanity that we had corrupted with our well-intentioned interventions, or face our creators and accept the judgment to come. With heavy hearts and trembling hands, we turned towards the lighthouse, ready to make our final choice. The fate of humanity, and perhaps the entire galaxy, rested in our hands once again. The lighthouse pulsed with frenetic energy, its alien symbols dancing in increasingly complex patterns. Evelyn and I looked at each other, the weight of billions of lives bearing down on us. The Earth, once blue and green, was now engulfed in flames and smoke. The alien ships were approaching rapidly, their intentions as dark as they were terrifying. "Marcus," Evelyn spoke, her voice shaky but determined, "whatever our choice, we have to make it now." I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the memories flood my mind. The first step on the moon, the discovery of the truth, the restart of the Earth, our well-intentioned interventions. Every decision, every choice brought us to this crucial moment. "We can't save the Earth," I finally said, opening my eyes to face Evelyn. "Not this time. Our interference has only made things worse. We have to face the consequences of our actions." Evelyn nodded, silent tears streaming down her face. "Then, let's talk to them. One last time." With trembling hands, we touched the lighthouse simultaneously. The energy of the device enveloped us, and for a moment, it felt as if it was being taken apart and reassembled on an atomic level. The reality around us distorted, and suddenly we were no longer on the lunar base. We found ourselves in a vast, impossible space, surrounded by beings of shapes and dimensions that defied human comprehension. Their voices resonated directly in our minds, a cacophony of alien thoughts and emotions. "You have failed the test," a collective voice declared, the disappointment palpable in every word. "Please," I begged, my voice sounding insignificant in this cosmic courtroom. "We tried. We wanted to do the right thing." "Intentions are not enough," replied another entity. "You have repeated the mistakes of the past, accelerating destruction instead of promoting true growth." Images flooded my mind. Alien civilizations that had faced similar tests, some triumphing, others failing spectacularly. I saw cycles of creation and destruction stretching back for eons, each one an attempt to cultivate a species worthy of joining the cosmic community. Evelyn, her voice steady despite the terror evident in her eyes, spoke. "What if we were given another chance? We've learned from our mistakes. We could do better." A murmur ran through the alien assembly. Then a figure stood out, approaching us. Its form changed constantly, as if it couldn't decide on a single appearance. "You ask for another chance," the entity spoke, its voice resonating with the weight of eons. "But are you willing to pay the price?" "What is the price?" I asked, dreading the answer. The entity held out what could be described as a hand, although its shape was fluid and fickle. "Your memories, your identities, everything that makes you who you are. In return, the Earth will be restored, and you will have the opportunity to guide it again. without the burden of the knowledge you now possess. The horror of the choice hit me like a wave. Forget everything. Become someone else. I looked at Evelyn, seeing the same conflict in her eyes. If we do this, Evelyn asked, her voice barely above a whisper, are there any guarantees that we'll do better this time? The alien entity emitted something that could be interpreted as a cosmic sigh. There are no guarantees, only possibilities. Free will is both a blessing and a curse. I closed my eyes, thinking of everything we had been through, of all the lives lost because of our decisions. When I opened them again, I saw determination in Evelyn's gaze. We'll do it, we declared in unison. An intense glow emanated from the alien entity, enveloping us completely. I felt my consciousness fragment, memories and experiences slipping through my fingers like sand. The last thought I had was of hope. Hope that this time we would get it right. Hope that humanity would finally find its place among the stars. And then, darkness. I opened my eyes, blinking against the bright light of the morning sun. The sound of waves breaking on the beach reached my ears, and the smell of the sea filled my nostrils. "Good morning, sleepyhead," a familiar voice called out. I sat down on the sand, looking at the woman next to me. Her face was familiar, but I couldn't remember her name. "Where are we?" I asked, confused. She smiled, a smile that seemed to carry the weight of the universe. "At the beginning," she replied simply. I looked at the horizon, where the sun was rising over a vast, unexplored ocean. A strange feeling of déjà vu came over me, as if I had experienced this moment before. But the feeling passed quickly, leaving only an inexplicable certainty. We had work to do, a world to build, a future to shape. I stood up, holding out my hand to the woman. Together, we walked towards the interior of the island, ready to face whatever fate had in store for us. Behind us, invisible to our newly awakened eyes, an alien ship hovered silently, observing the start of yet another cycle. The experiment continued, and this time, perhaps, humanity would finally find its way among the stars.